Have you ever rolled your eyes at something your parents or grandparents repeated 100 times, only to realize years later that it perfectly described the mess you just walked into? Have you ever found yourself whispering one of those corny old lines in a sleepless night and suddenly feeling, with a little shock, that it was not just a saying at all, but a mirror for your life? Welcome back to the channel, my friend. This is the place where we sit down together, not to throw around abstract theories, but to talk about life, destiny, cause and effect, and inner practice in the language of everyday stories. Today we are going to unpack something that on the surface looks very ordinary: 10 old sayings that sound like simple folk wisdom, even a bit cliché, but behind them is a whole map of how your destiny bends, how your heart grows, and how your choices slowly write the script of your life. The text we are expanding from today points out something very interesting. These sayings often seem to contradict one another. On one side, you hear "never go back" and "do not eat the grass behind you." On the other side, you hear "a prodigal who returns is priceless." You hear "good people are rewarded and bad people are punished." Then in the next breath, "kind people get bullied, ungentle horses get ridden." You hear "never judge by appearance." And then "clothes make the person, saddle makes the horse." It sounds like the elders are constantly changing their minds, but actually, they are all pointing to one core lesson: life is not black and white. Real wisdom is not about memorizing one slogan and applying it mechanically to every situation. Real wisdom is the ability to stand in the tension between two truths, feel the nuance of the moment, and make a choice that keeps your heart clear and your karma clean. In other words, these 10 sayings are not exam questions. They are 10 mirrors. You can treat them as dead knowledge, memorize them for tests, and then throw them aside. Or you can use them as 10 checkpoints in your journey. 10 places where life will ask you, are you awake or on autopilot? Are you acting from habit or from awareness? Are you moving toward more wisdom, compassion, and balance, or further away? So, in this long script, I want to sit with you and go through these 10 simple sayings one by one. Not like a lecture, but like a series of stories. Each story will show a moment when a person stands at a crossroads and has to choose which saying to live by. Each turning point will reveal something about cause and effect, about destiny, about the way our minds create our future. And maybe, as you listen, you will remember your own moments at these same crossroads. Let us begin. Imagine first that you are lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, and suddenly an old phrase your mom used to nag you with floats up in your mind. Maybe it is "do not go back to that person," or "everything will work out in the end," or "it is better to bend than to break." In your teenage years, you dismissed those lines as controlling, old-fashioned, or out of touch. But now, after your own heartbreaks and failures, you hear them differently. You realize that every sigh, every cliché, was bought with someone's tears and years. They are not just words. They are the condensed essence of 1,000 human experiences. The first pair of sayings that we will look at is about love and turning back. On one hand, there is the classic "a good horse does not go back to the grass behind it." On the other, there is "a prodigal who truly turns around is more precious than gold." So, which is right? Are you supposed to never go back to an old relationship, no matter what? Or are you supposed to give second chances because people can change? Let me tell you a story. There is a woman we will call Rose. She met her first boyfriend, Aaron, in university. They were together for many years. In the early days, their life was simple and sweet. They rented a tiny room with thin walls, They could hear the neighbors sneeze. They were broke, but they believed the classic romantic picture someday they would buy a home, get married, have children, and grow old together. But reality did what reality always does. After graduation, Rose worked hard, staying late at the office, taking on more responsibilities, slowly climbing her way up. Aaron, on the other hand, kept switching jobs and starting little ventures, none of which really took off. At first, Rose believed in his entrepreneurial spirit. Over time, though, she began to feel that he was more in love with his fantasy than with the actual work. She felt he was not reliable. He felt she did not understand him. Their fights increased. One night, after another argument about money and the future, Rose slammed the door and ended the relationship. She told her friends she would never, ever get back with him. She quoted that saying, like a shield-a-good horse does not go back to old grass. She convinced herself that going back would mean she had no self-respect. Time passed. Rose moved on. She focused on her career, her own growth. She dated other people. Years later, at a professional event, she unexpectedly ran into Aaron. At first it was awkward small talk. Then, as they shared more, she realized something surprising. He was no longer the same boy she had left. Those years after their breakup had not been easy for him. Without her support, he had been forced to face his own illusions. Life had beaten him up. There were nights when he wanted to give up, but slowly he learned to stand up again, not to prove himself to others, but to simply live more honestly. He had taken humble jobs, learned new skills, swallowed his ego, and gradually built a stable career. The arrogance she used to hate in him had softened into quiet confidence. Rose, too, had changed. She realized that back then, she had wanted to control his path, demanding that he walk the exact road she imagined. When he did not, she labeled him as not good enough and used that saying as a weapon rather than a mirror. Now they were face to face as different people. They did not rush back into each other's arms. They spent a long time getting to know each other again, not as the ghosts of who they once were, but as the people they had become. Eventually, they decided to try again. One evening, someone asked Rose, a little teasingly, "So, did you eat the old grass after all?" She smiled and said, "I did not eat old grass. I met a new person who happens to have the same name, and I met a new version of myself as well. What is the wisdom here?" The saying about not going back is useful when your return is just emotional addiction, fear of loneliness, and unwillingness to accept that something is over. It warns you not to keep falling into the same pit over and over, hoping pain will magically taste like happiness if you repeat it enough times. The saying about a prodigal who turns back being priceless is for the rare situations when someone truly changes from the inside out. It is an encouragement to recognize sincere repentance, to see that growth is possible, and that forgiveness can sometimes turn a broken story into a deeper, richer one. From the angle of spiritual practice, the question is not should I always go back or never go back. The question is, who am I being right now? Are you that person who is clinging to a fantasy, refusing to learn? Or are you someone who has looked deeply at your own patterns and chosen a wiser path? In love, as in all things, what matters is not just the direction of your feet, but the clarity of your heart. Now let us move to the second pair, which has to do with relationships close to home. One saying goes roughly like this: a rabbit does not eat the grass right beside its own burrow. It warns you against mixing your most intimate environment with certain kinds of risk. Another saying goes, the pavilion closest to the water gets the moon first, meaning that those who are near have an advantage in love and opportunity. So which is it? Is it dangerous to get involved with people who are too close, like colleagues, neighbors, or friends of friends? Or is it exactly those people who have the best chance to know and love you? Imagine Emma, who works in a small company. A new colleague, Ben, joins her team. They sit close, chat often, and gradually a gentle warmth appears between them. Friends tease them. Emma immediately defends herself. No way. That is too close. What if we break up? I will have to see his face every day. She repeats the rabbit saying and refuses to even explore her own feelings. At the same time, she goes on blind dates with people she barely knows. People from completely different circles. She convinces herself that this is safer because if it does not work out, they can just disappear from each other's lives. But those distant relationships remain shallow. They collapse at the first sign of challenge because there is no shared context, no shared daily life. One evening, she stays late at the office. She and Ben end up talking about their families, fears, and dreams. She is surprised by how deeply he listens, how clearly he sees her patterns minus things she has never been able to express to strangers on dates. She realizes that sometimes the ones closest to the water are indeed the ones who can see you most fully. Does that mean every office romance is a good idea? Of course not. Here is where the wisdom of both sayings needs to be combined. The rabbit saying is reminding you to protect your core nest, your home, your work, your practice space. It warns that if you mix everything together carelessly, a romantic failure can shake your whole foundation. But the pavilion saying reminds you not to shut down your heart out of fear. Proximity can be a blessing if handled with responsibility, communication, and courage. From the perspective of karma and inner training, the real question is, am I acting out of fear or out of awareness? Am I avoiding close connections to escape discomfort? Or am I engaging with clear boundaries and respect? In relationships, you are always walking that fine line between intimacy and chaos. Wisdom is the art of feeling where that line is in each situation, not hiding behind slogans. The third pair of sayings moves us into the realm of tolerance and boundaries. On one side, there is the famous image of the big hearted leader whose belly is wide enough to float a boat. It praises tolerance, forgiveness, and the ability to absorb small offenses without blowing up. On the other side, reality constantly reminds us that without boundaries, people get used to stepping on us. Consider a man named Victor. In his youth, he prided himself on his ability to endure. If someone disrespected him, he would stay silent and tell himself he was practicing tolerance. When colleagues pushed their work onto him, he took it quietly, thinking that this showed he was generous. When relatives borrowed money and never returned it, he smiled bitterly and called himself too kind. Over time, something strange happened. The more he endured, the more people treated him like a doormat. His silence was not read as kindness, but as permission. Inside, his resentment grew. He began to complain, "Look, kind people are bullied, gentle horses are ridden." He wanted to turn cold, to shut his heart completely. Then one day, he heard a teacher in a Dharma talk say, "Compassion without wisdom becomes self-harm. True kindness always includes clear boundaries." These words hit him like a bell. Suddenly he realized he had misunderstood the saying about the big-hearted leader. It was never an invitation to erase himself. It was an encouragement to not be petty, not to hold grudges for small things, to be able to see in others' ignorance and forgive. But it did not mean he should allow serious harm. Injustice, or abuse to continue unchallenged. He began to practice new habits. When colleagues tried to dump work on him, he calmly said, "I am at capacity. I can help with this part, but the rest you will need to handle." When relatives hinted about borrowing money, he replied honestly, "I am not in a position to lend right now." When someone deliberately disrespected him, he did not explode, but he also did not pretend nothing had happened. He addressed it directly, with steady eyes. At first, people were shocked. They were used to the old Victor who swallowed everything. Some called him selfish, some tested his boundaries. But over time, a new pattern emerged. Those who only wanted to take advantage drifted away. Those who respected mutual respect stayed and learned to treat him properly. Inside, his resentment slowly melted. He was finally practicing true compassion, gentle in the heart, firm on the ground. This is how destiny shifts in seemingly small, daily decisions. Every time you say yes out of fear rather than love, you tie another knot in your karma. Every time you say no with clarity and kindness, you loosen one. A big heart is not a trash can. It is a vessel that holds both kindness and self-respect. The fourth pair of sayings is about responsibility and faith. There is the lazy version of everything will work out in the end, used as an excuse to avoid planning, effort, and responsibility. Then there is the mature trust that even when you have done your best, some things are out of your hands, and you can rest in that knowledge. Picture a young man named Leo. Whenever a deadline was coming, his colleagues were stressed, but he shrugged and said, "Relax, everything will work out." On the surface, this sounded optimistic, but in reality, he used it to justify procrastination. He did not double-check his work. He did not prepare backup plans. When things fell apart, he blamed fate, saying, "Well, the car reached the mountain and there was no road. What can we do?" One day, a major project failed, costing the company money and reputation. Leo's part had been full of avoidable mistakes. His manager confronted him, and he responded with his usual line. No one could have predicted this. But this time, the manager laid out all the emails, warnings, and chances he had ignored. Leo had to face the uncomfortable truth: his faith was not faith at all. It was avoidance. Around the same time, he met another colleague, Maya, who also loved that saying about things working out. But in her mouth, it meant something completely different. She worked carefully, checked details, communicated clearly, and prepared plans A, B, and C. When something still went wrong, she sighed, smiled, and said, "I did what I could. What is beyond me, I leave to the flow of cause and effect." In other words, she combined effort with surrender. She practiced the balance of I am fully responsible for my actions, and I am not in control of the entire universe. That is the spiritual middle way. When you lean too far into control, you burn out. When you lean too far into fatalism, you collapse. When you walk in the middle, you act vigorously but with inner softness. From a karmic perspective, this is crucial. Your effort is your offering to the universe. The result is the echo of countless causes, not just your own. When you understand that, you neither become arrogant when things go well, nor fall into despair when they do not. You keep planting good seeds, trusting that sooner or later, some of them will bear fruit. The fifth pair of sayings is about past glory and present effort. You have probably heard something like a thin camel is still bigger than a horse, meaning that someone who once had high status still has leftover advantages. You have also heard the warning that a plucked phoenix is not as good as a chicken. meaning that if you rely only on your past and stop growing, you will eventually be surpassed by people who quietly keep improving. Let us look at an older man named Lin. For many years, he had a high position in a state-owned company. People greeted him respectfully, doors opened for him, and his title was like a golden aura. He told stories about big meetings, decisions, and honors. Then came restructuring. Overnight, his position disappeared. He was offered a lower role or early retirement. He chose retirement, confident that, as he loved to say, a thin camel is still bigger than a horse. With my background, I can walk into any company and be considered high-level. Reality was not that simple. When he applied for jobs, companies saw his age, his outdated skills, and his difficulty adapting to new technology. New managers, younger than him, were not impressed by his old title. Months passed. He took walks in the housing complex, proudly telling everyone about his past achievements. Yet his savings slowly shrank. His days had no structure, and his sense of worth clung more and more desperately to what used to be. One day, at the market, he overheard a conversation with a woman selling vegetables. She wore a simple apron, moving quickly between customers, while also chatting about how she managed her online live stream to sell produce. Curious, he asked her about it. She explained that she had been a full-time mother, then started selling vegetables, then gradually learned to use social media. Her online revenue now exceeded hers all. She laughed and said, "I was never a phoenix, but it does not matter whether you are a camel or a chicken. What matters is whether your bones can still move." Her words pierced him. He saw himself clearly, a man hiding in "I used to be," using his past as an excuse not to face the present. That night, for the first time, he did not repeat his old title at dinner. Instead, he opened his computer and searched for courses to learn new skills. It was not easy. His brain felt slower. His pride hurt when he had to learn from younger people. But slowly, something in him woke up again. Years later, when someone mentioned that a thin camel is still bigger than a horse, he smiled and replied, "I would rather be a horse who is still running than a camel lying in old photographs." From the perspective of destiny, this story is very simple. Your past blessings minus family background, education, status minus are part of your karma, but they are like money in a bank account. You can live off them for a while. If you never add anything, one day they will be gone. On the other hand, a person with very ordinary beginnings who keeps cultivating skills, character, and heart can surpass many former phoenixes. In spiritual language, blessings are not permanent. They are the ripe fruit of past good seeds. If you keep planting, new fruit will appear. If you only eat and never plant, the orchard will go empty. The sixth pair of sayings is about study and work. Parents love to say all trades are low. Only study is noble when pushing their children to stay in school. At the same time, they also say there are champions in every trade. So, which is it? Does only academic success count? Or can any honest work be a path to excellence? Think of a young man named Tao in a small village. His grades were mediocre. He failed the college entrance exam. Relatives shook their heads inside. His life is basically set. No diploma, no future. Tao felt ashamed. He avoided social gatherings because every conversation turned into a comparison of whose child had gone to which university. He eventually found a job in a breakfast shop. He discovered, to his surprise, that he liked it. He enjoyed kneading dough before dawn, listening to water boil, adjusting the taste of fillings, and seeing customers' faces light up when they bit into a fresh bun. The owner was kind and willing to teach. Tao learned quickly, then began experimenting with new flavors. Over time, he saved money and opened his own small shop, while other breakfast places simply opened and sold. Tao recorded short videos of himself making food, shared little stories about his customers, and uploaded them. Slowly, his account grew. People traveled from other towns to try his breakfast. One day, an old classmate visited and said, half joking, half serious, "We used to think you failed, but look at you now. You have more customers than some people have followers on social media." When someone sneered, "It is just selling buns," Tao laughed and replied, "There are champions in every trade, right?" At the same time, he did not dismiss study. He knew that the ability to learn had been crucial to his success. He kept reading about nutrition, management, and marketing. He understood that study is not just about passing exams. It is about the lifelong capacity to learn, to think clearly, to understand the world, and to avoid being easily manipulated. So the two sayings are not enemies. They are like two hands. One hand reminds you that education matters minus it opens doors, trains your mind. The other hand reminds you that no work done with skill, integrity, and creativity is inherently low. The real tragedy is not failing an exam. It is giving up on learning altogether. The real success is not a particular degree. It is the courage to grow wherever life plants you. The seventh pair of sayings touches a painful, not for many kind minus-hearted people. On one side, you hear good is rewarded, evil is punished. On the other, when you are exhausted and betrayed, you cry. Kind people are bullied, gentle horses are ridden. So which is true? Let us look at a woman we will call Yara. She is the classic helpful person. If a colleague needs someone to cover a shift, they ask her. If a friend is sad at midnight, they call her. If a relative needs someone to run errands, they think of her. She cannot say no. The more she gives, the more people expect. Strangely, very few stand up for her when she needs help. One day, a friend asks her to co-sign a loan. The friend swears the money will be paid back in 3 months. Yara's instinct says it is risky, but she does not want to seem selfish. She signs. Months pass. The friend dodges her messages, then disappears. The lender comes after Yara. Her credit is damaged, her savings are threatened, and her heart is full of bitterness. She lies in bed at night and whispers into the dark, "I am so kind. What did I get in return? Is kindness just a joke?" Later, she attends a talk on karma and practice. The teacher says something that flips a switch in her mind. The teachings speak about compassion, but they never tell you to be a leaky do-gooder. Real goodness has wisdom. It helps as far as your strength and responsibility allow, without destroying your own life. If you are already bleeding and you still force yourself to give blood, that is not virtue. That is confusion. Yara suddenly understands. Up until now, her kindness had been mixed with fear of rejection, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of losing relationships. She had been trading her boundaries for a fragile sense of worth. That is why her arm felt so painful. From then on, she starts to change. She still helps people, but she measures carefully. When someone asks for a favor, she checks, do I really have the ability to do this? Is this person taking responsibility for their own life? Or are they just using me as a crutch? She learns to say no without guilt. She learns that sometimes the most compassionate act is to let someone face the consequences of their choices. Over time, her circle of friends shifts. Those who only liked her because she was easy to use fade away. Those who genuinely respect her and value mutual support draw closer. She starts to see reward and punishment differently. The deepest reward of kindness is not that every person you help will treat you well. The deepest reward is that your own heart becomes cleaner, stronger, and wiser. From a karmic angle, goodness and badness are not simple 1 to -1 transactions. The seed of your intention will ripen in your mind first. Kindness with wisdom brings inner peace, resilience, and subtle protection. Kindness without wisdom brings exhaustion, resentment, and confusion. The law of cause and effect is not broken. We just often misread it because we are only looking at the outer drama. The 8th pair of sayings is about speech. There is a saying that praises people who speak everything they know and hold nothing back, implying that complete frankness is a virtue. There is another that warns shallow relationships do not dare deep words and that silence is golden. A man named Sean once prided himself on being brutally honest. In meetings, if he saw a problem with the plan, he would directly say, "This is wrong. You did not think it through." He believed he was doing everyone a favor by telling it like it is. When his manager started distancing himself, when promotions slipped away, Sean concluded, people cannot handle the truth. One day, he became a team leader. During a meeting, a new colleague criticized his approach in front of everyone, using almost the exact tone Sean had always used on others. For a moment, anger flared in him. His chest tightened. It did not even matter whether the criticism was valid. What hurt was the feeling of being attacked in public. That night, he wrote down a sentence in his notebook: Ruth still needs the right timing, place, and tone. Sincerity is the starting point. Compassion is the way you deliver it. He realized that his called honesty had often been self-centered. He wanted to feel righteous. He had not considered how his words landed on other hearts. In spiritual practice, there is a phrase that can be roughly translated as teaching according to the other person's readiness. It means you observe someone's current state and offer advice that they can actually receive, rather than dumping your full truth on them and feeling proud. From then on, Sean learned to adjust. With close friends who had earned the right to deep feedback, he remained direct, but with tenderness. With colleagues and acquaintances, he chose his words more carefully. Sometimes he remained silent in public and spoke in private. Sometimes he let things go because he could see that people were not ready to hear. He did not become fake. He became skillful. There is a huge difference between holding back the truth because you fear conflict and holding back the truth because you see that speaking now would only cause harm. The sayings about silence and shallow ties are not asking you to lock your heart. They are asking you to protect your own softness and other people's dignity. The 9th pair of sayings brings us 2 moments of crisis. One voice shouts, "Better to break like jade than to survive like a tile." Another whispers, "If the green hills remain, there will always be firewood." One honors uncompromising courage, the other respects strategic retreat. There is a story in our source text about a technician in a factory years ago. The safety standards were terrible. To increase production, leaders forced the workers to overload the machines. One day, the technician discovered a fatal flaw in the system that could easily cause catastrophic accidents. He wrote a long, detailed report to the higher ups, warning them that if they did not fix it, disaster was only a matter of time. Instead of thanking him, The manager called him in and said, "Do not cause trouble. If something happens, we will take responsibility." He faced a hard choice. He could stay, keep quiet, and hope nothing happened minus protecting his job but gambling with lives. He could blow the whistle publicly, likely losing his job and making enemies in the local power structure. He wrestled with these options, feeling the pull of both sayings. In the end, he chose a middle way. He continued working to feed his family, but he secretly documented every unsafe operation, every near-miss accident, and sent the information to higher safety authorities outside the factory. Months later, investigators arrived. The factory was forced to change its practices. Many workers' lives, including his own, were indirectly saved. Years later, his apprentice asked him, "Why did you not just quit? That environment was so dangerous." He answered, "If I had quit just for myself, that would have been self-protection. I stayed because I knew that if something bad happened, it would not only hurt me, it would hurt many brothers. So I chose a path that kept me alive and also protected as many as possible." Here you can see that breaking like jade is not always the highest good, and remaining like a tile is not always cowardice. The question is, what are you preserving your life for? If you compromise only to avoid responsibility, no amount of pretty sayings can cover that. If you bend temporarily to protect more lives and to wait for a better moment to act, that flexibility can be an expression of great wisdom. From a spiritual view, this is about your capacity. Saints and bodhisattvas are portrayed as willing to sacrifice themselves for others, but most of us are not at that level. If you imitate a hero in name only, without their strength and clarity, you may drag your family independence into suffering. The middle way is to be as brave as you can in each situation, without blind ego or blind fear. Finally, the 10th pair of sayings concerns appearance and reality. You have heard that people cannot be judged by their looks. The sea cannot be measured with a bucket. You have also heard that people rely on clothing the way horses rely on saddles. Are we supposed to ignore appearances completely or respect them? There was once a young man named Eric who hated dressing up. He believed that caring about clothes and grooming was shallow. He wore the same wrinkled shirts everywhere, did not comb his hair, and showed up to interviews in worn-out sneakers. When he failed to get jobs, he comforted himself by saying, "They cannot see my inner talent. People are so superficial." One day, after yet another rejection, a friend gave him gentle feedback. "Your abilities are fine," she said, "but you send the message that you do not respect yourself for the occasion. No one expects you to wear expensive brands, but basic cleanliness and neatness make it easier for people to give you a chance to show your inner qualities." At first, Eric felt insulted. Was he really going to become one of those people who judge themselves by their outfit? Then he reflected more deeply on the two sayings. Never judge by appearance as a warning. Do not be fooled by surface glamour. Do not dismiss someone just because they look plain. Do not equate worth with packaging. The saying about clothes and saddles is a reminder your outer presentation is a form of communication. It can either support your inner truth or sabotage it. Eventually, he decided to experiment. He cleaned up his wardrobe, plain but well-fitting shirts, clean shoes, simple grooming. The next time he walked into an interview, the hiring manager looked at him longer, asked more questions, and really listened to his answers. Same person, same skills, different outer signal. From the angle of practice, the point is not to obsess over appearance or to despise it. It is to use every aspect of your life, including your clothing and posture, as a way to send a message. I respect this moment. I respect myself. I respect the people I am meeting. That itself is part of inner cultivation. When you put all 10 pairs of sayings together, what do you see? You see that each one is not a rigid rule, but a doorway to discernment. If you cling to only one saying in each pair, you will swing to extremes. If you learn to hold both in your mind and look at the actual situation, you will begin to walk the middle path. In conflicts of love, you will neither stubbornly refuse to reflect on yourself nor blindly return to someone who has not changed. In close relationships, you will neither avoid all intimacy nor mix your nest with chaotic entanglements. In forgiveness, you will neither harden your heart into stone nor dissolve your boundaries. In work and effort, you will neither lie back and hope things magically fix themselves nor choke yourself with the illusion of total control. In the way you face loss and change, you will neither worship your past blessings nor deny the power of persistent effort. In education and work, you will neither worship diplomas nor despise humble trades. In kindness, you will neither let yourself be drained dry or turn cold and cynical. In speech, you will neither hurt people with blunt words nor hide every truth. In crisis, you will neither rush into pointless self-minus sacrifice nor shrink into cowardice. In appearance, you will neither judge completely by looks nor neglect the signals you send. What connects all of this is one word: awareness. Your ancestors did not just want you to sound wise, they wanted you to become more awake. The text we started from says clearly that when you look at your own experiences through these sayings, they stop being nagging noise and start becoming signposts. Awareness means that instead of asking, which saying is right, you asked, what is this moment asking of my heart? Instead of thinking, if I quote the right proverb, I will be safe, you think, if I see clearly and choose consciously, I will be at peace. Whatever happens, from the perspective of karma, every time you choose from awareness, you plant a seed of better destiny. Every time you choose from habit, fear, or ego, you strengthen old patterns that keep repeating. The sayings themselves are neutral. They become blessings or traps depending on how you use them. Let us bring this closer to you. Maybe as you listened, certain moments in your own life surfaced. A relationship you refused to revisit out of pride, only to realize later that you had run away from growth, or a relationship you kept going back to, calling it forgiveness when it was actually self-minus abandonment. A time when you told the truth in a meeting and lost a friend, only to see later that your words were more about your ego than about helping. A time when you screamed inside, kindness is useless, after being hurt, and considered shutting down your heart. These are not random misfortunes. They are your training grounds. Every painful story is a classroom where life is trying to show you, you trusted the wrong saying this time. Next time, can you see more deeply? I want to share something personal in tone here. Something many of us share, even if our details differ. There are nights when you lie awake, replaying an argument with your parents, and suddenly you hear their voices from years ago. We are not trying to control you. We just know what that road can lead to. In your teens, you thought they were dramatic. In your 30s or 40s, after falling into the very pit they warned you about, you understand the pain behind their nagging. Their soul-minus called corny sayings were not mere words. They were the distilled results of their own karmic lessons, of the mistakes they did not want you to repeat. There are moments when you think about a saying like people are not what they seem and recall the time you trusted a polished surface and got burned. you realize that next time, you must look at action in character, not just packaging. Then there are moments when you judged someone too quickly by their rough outer layer and later discovered a huge heart inside. You remember the saying again, this time as a reminder to open your eyes wider. In my own symbolic life as a storyteller, there have been many times when I grabbed one proverb like a weapon. I used good horses do not go back to justify my stubbornness. Kind people are bullied to justify my bitterness. Better broken than bent to justify my refusal to negotiate. Only later did I see how one-sided my understanding had been. How little compassion I had for myself and others. That is the beauty and danger of simple sayings. They enter your heart easily. But if you do not deepen them with practice, they become cartoons in a world that is not cartoon-like at all. So how do we turn these 10 sayings into real tools of awakening instead of lazy shortcuts? First, pause before you quote. The next time you feel a proverb jump to your tongue, ask yourself, am I using this to really understand or to end the conversation? Sometimes, instead of saying, well, kind people are bullied, you can ask, where did my kindness lack boundaries? Instead of saying, everything will work out, ask, what can I actually do right now? Second, use spares, not singles. Whenever one saying appears in your mind, consciously bring up its counterpart. If you feel, never go back. Also ask, but what if there's been real growth? If you think, better to break than bend, also ask, is there a way to bend without losing my center? This practice widens your view and prevents you from clinging to one extreme. Third, check your intention before acting. Ask, from where in me is this decision coming? Fear, pride, laziness, compassion, clarity? The same external action can be rooted in very different inner states, leading to very different karma. Does your silence come from cowardice or from wisdom? Does your help come from love or from a need for approval? When you see this clearly, you start to rewire your destiny. Fourth, reflect regularly. The original texts suggests using these sayings as mirrors to review your past choices and see the lines of cause and effect that lead to your current situation. When you do this not with self-hate, but with curiosity, your old stories stop being pure regret and become fuel for growth. Over time, something subtle but powerful will happen. You will stop arguing so much about whether elders are right or wrong. You will stop using proverbs to judge others. Instead, you will use them to examine yourself. You will see how your current life minus the shape of your relationships, the stability of your finances, the condition of your body, the atmosphere around you minus is not random fate, but the ripened fruit of countless small choices guided by small thoughts. You will also begin to feel more compassion for others. When you see someone repeating your old mistakes, you will remember how it felt to be blind. Instead of shouting, "I told you so," you might share a story and a saying, then let them choose. You will understand that everyone has their own timing of awakening. As we come toward the end of this long reflection, I want to invite you to feel something very simple. Every saying you heard as a child, every story you are living now, every moment of conflict between old wisdom and new desires minus, these are not random fragments. They are all part of your practice. Life is not happening to you. It is happening with you. In response to your mind, the elders who left behind these 10 simple sayings were not just trying to control you. They were trying to hand you a small lamp for your path. Whether that lamp becomes a guiding light or just background noise depends on how you hold it. So now, I want to turn the question back to you. Which saying, out of all the ones we have talked about, touched you the most today? Was it the tension between leaving and returning in love? The balance between forgiving and setting boundaries? The struggle between being kind and not being used? The choice between telling the truth and keeping quiet? Or the contrast between outer image and inner worth? If you feel comfortable, share your story in the comments. Maybe there was one line you once hated hearing that later saved you from a disaster. Maybe there was one saying you misused as an excuse, and now you see it differently. Maybe you want to write your own 11th saying that summarizes a lesson life has taught you. Your experience might be the mirror someone else needs. If this video script kept you company, if it helped you see some of your own crossroads more clearly, please remember to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment. That is how the platform knows to show this kind of long, reflective content to more people who are quietly searching for wisdom, cause and effect, compassion, practice, and a sense of destiny that is not just blind luck. And if you feel called to support this space more deeply, you can also consider joining as a member. That support allows us to keep taking these everyday sayings, stories, and fragments of tradition and turning them into long conversations about awakening unreal change in ordinary life. Thank you for walking with me through these 10 sayings today. May you no longer be pushed around by one-line slogans, but learn to stand in the living center between them. May you use every proverb, every story, and every mistake as a chance to deepen your awareness. May your destiny slowly bend toward more wisdom, more compassion, cleaner karma, and a heart that is both strong and soft. There comes a time when you realize you want something that belongs just to you, something that brings comfort and keeps you connected to your inner world. Wall-crafted bracelet does exactly that. Quietly, softly, and consistently. If you felt drawn to any bracelet in this video, you'll find the purchase link in the video description and many more auctions in the channel's storefront. Because sometimes the smallest item can bring the biggest sense of peace.